In my previous life, my father passed away early. My mother raised me alone, which was rather arduous. Of course, it was I who endured the hardship, for my mother had always regarded me as a burden. She thought my existence hindered her from seeking a new relationship. Consequently, she neglected me completely, and left me at my uncle's house all day long. She would disappear for 10 days, or even half a month without a trace. When she finally came back, she would not only eat and take things, but also leave without a word after that. Because of this, my aunt had always been quite resentful towards her. As a result, she also treated me with extreme dislike, either beating or scolding me, never showing me a kind face. At that time, I was still young, yet I understood what it meant to be dependent on others. I dared not even breathe when being scolded or beaten. I tried my utmost to do housework and take care of the children at home, hoping they would see my value and not drive me out. Unfortunately, they eventually sent me back to my mother. My mother was extremely dissatisfied with this, but had no choice. She could only keep me this burden. However, she was busy socializing and looking for men every day, and simply didn't care about me. I was so hungry that I kept drinking cold water at home, until my stomach felt like it was about to burst. I suffered from urinary incontinence, dizziness, nausea, and vomited all over the floor. When my mother came back and saw this, instead of showing any concern, she slapped me immediately. "Are you a dead person? I've been working so hard to maintain this family, and you just ruin everything like this. I should have aborted you if I had known you were so heartless. I wouldn't have ended up like this. Why is my life so miserable?" While scolding, she sat aside and started crying. Even so, she still held herself upright, and didn't wipe her face randomly. She cried gracefully, and I lay on the ground, with a swollen face, gasping for breath. I was like a tattered rag, unnoticed and not even given a glance. Later I naturally died. It's rather ridiculous to say that I starved to death. While my mother was raising her glass and drinking merrily with her friends, I starved to death alone beside the trash can. I thought my ridiculous life had come to an end. Unexpectedly, when I opened my eyes, I was back again. This was truly unbelievable. Hearing my mother's questioning and looking at the cake she had bought in front of me. "Did my grandmother also spoil your birthday like this?" My mother was stunned. Taking advantage of her momentary stupor, I grabbed the cake and threw it on the ground. I was screaming wildly while overturning the table and chairs. "If you don't like me, why did you give birth to me? I wish you had burned me together with my father when you cremated him. It would have saved the cost of an urn. You're always putting on makeup and wearing different clothes every day, while I can't even get enough to eat. If you can't afford to raise me, don't give birth to me. You just wanted to have a good time then, and don't want to take responsibility, right?" My bold words completely stunned them. My mother's body trembled, and she gritted her teeth in anger. "You little beast. If I'm a little beast, then what are you? And what is my grandmother?" As I spoke, I looked up at my grandmother with indignation. "Grandma, she's scolding you." My grandmother's face turned extremely ugly. My mother trembled even more. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. "Chunmei, what's going on?" It was the neighbor next door. This house was old, and the sound insulation was very poor. Even a slightly louder voice could be heard everywhere. I had been screaming so desperately, and making a ruckus just now. Surely many people had heard it. Naturally, some kind-hearted people came to inquire. I quickly got up from the ground, grabbed a handful of the smashed cake, and smeared it on my mouth, then rushed over to open the door. Standing outside the door was Aunt Lu. She was a nice person but talked too much. Exactly the one I needed. "Chunmei, you..." "Hey, Ching Ching, what have you done? How did you get like this?" I knew I looked a mess at the moment, but I wasn't afraid. I raised my head and gave a bright smile. "Aunt Lu, it's my birthday today. My mother bought me a cake." As I spoke, I pointed behind me. When she saw the cake on the ground, her expression was indescribable. My mother's plan finally failed. She was a person who cared a great deal about her face. No matter how messy things were inside, she had to look presentable outside, and never let outsiders laugh at her. She quickly walked to my side and pushed me aside, with a big smile on her face. "Sister-in-law Lu, don't believe her nonsense." Ouch! Before she could finish speaking, I suddenly let out a scream, covering my arm with tears in my eyes. "Mom, I won't say anything next time. Please don't pinch me, okay?" Inadvertently, I rolled up my sleeve, revealing bruises all over my arm. It looked shocking. Aunt Lu's eyes widened. "Oh my dear. How could you be so cruel?" My mother was also shocked, her eyes almost popping out. After all, she had no idea where these injuries came from. Of course, I pinched them myself in the chaos just now. I used so much force and it really hurt. "Chunmei, sister-in-law, I know you're feeling, but the child is innocent. You can't take your anger out on the child," Aunt Lu persuaded earnestly. My mother was speechless, and could only hold her anger and send her away first. After closing the door, she turned around and raised her hand towards me. I didn't dodge or avoid, and even offered my face. Go ahead and hit me. I promise I'll shout even louder than before, so that everyone can see how you abuse your own child. My mother clenched her raised hand into a fist and finally put it down. What kind of sin did I commit in my previous life to give birth to you, this little debt collector in this life? My mother hid back in her room. I shrugged indifferently, and picked up a fork to pick at the cake on the ground. Although it was smashed, part of it was still edible. I was almost starving to death. How could I be picky about food when begging for it? As I was eating, my grandmother squatted beside me, wanting to say something but hesitant. I looked at her. Grandma, I know what you want to say, but you can also see what kind of life I've been living. If I don't go crazy, I'll really starve to death. However, after all, she is your mother, and you cannot disrespect her. Respect is mutual. Everyone is living their life for the first time. Why should I endure grievances? My grandmother was left speechless. She sighed, took out 100 yuan from her pocket, stuffed it into my hand. I said thank you, and put it in my pocket. Early the next morning, I got up to go to school. Thanks to the 9-year compulsory education, and my academic performance, tuition and miscellaneous fees were waived. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the opportunity to go to school. When I finished packing and was about to go out, my mother also came out. Seeing the cake still on the ground, her face immediately darkened. You little wretch, why don't you clean this up? I gave her a sidelong glance and said, what are you barking about? Then, before she could start yelling, I quickly ran out, closed the door and slipped away. When I reached the entrance of the community, I met Aunt Lu, who was coming back from a stroll. I greeted her obediently. Good girl. Aunt Lu touched my head and stuffed a steamed bun into my hand. It was still warm. Eat it quickly. Don't go to school on an empty stomach. I held the bun tightly, and my eyes felt a bit hot. Outsiders could see that I often didn't have enough to eat, yet my family couldn't. How ridiculous. I thanked her in a low voice, and then quickly ran towards school. Now I am in the 3rd year of junior high school, a crucial moment for further studies. Not a single minute or second can be wasted. In the past, I was busy with my studies, taking care of the family, and couldn't even get enough to eat. I was physically and mentally exhausted. In the end, I failed to get into high school. My mother flew into a rage, saying that I had shamed her and treated me even more harshly. After graduating from junior high school, I went to work. Being young, I could only do jobs like washing dishes and sweeping the floor. Yet there were still people who disliked me. On the day of payday, they cornered me in a small alley, robbed me of all my money, and even stripped off my clothes. In the cold winter, I was wearing only long johns and a long-sleeved undershirt, shivering with cold and my eyes dimming from hunger. At that time, I hadn't eaten for 3 days, and was looking forward to having a full meal with my salary. But it turned out to be in vain. Later, I really couldn't hold on anymore. I went to the trash can and rummaged for some leftover food, trying to fill my stomach. Unfortunately, not long after I started eating, I passed away. If I could do it all over again, I definitely wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. I had only one thought in my mind. I want to go to college and leave this disgusting place. The first step is to fill my stomach. At noon, when everyone went to the cafeteria to eat, I touched the money in my pocket. After looking around, I fixed my eyes on the class beauty, Xiao Xian. She was very picky about food. She would buy a lot of dishes but only eat a little of each, and throw the rest away. It was such a waste. So when she was about to get up, I resolutely walked over and pressed her shoulder. Let me handle this. Xiao Xian was so startled by my sudden appearance that her face turned pale. By the time she reacted, I had already picked up the chopsticks, and was shoveling food into my mouth crazily. Zhao Qingqing, are you a reincarnated starving ghost? I was too busy gobbling to look up, and just responded perfunctorily. I was very fast. In no time, a large portion of the meal had all gone into my stomach. When I was full and wiped my mouth, I looked up and saw that Xiao Xian was still there. At this time, she had composed herself, and was looking at me intently. I coughed softly and apologized sincerely. I'm sorry. I was really starving. Seeing that you had so much left, I just couldn't bear to waste it, so I ate it. Xiao Xian looked me up and down a bit suspicious. Don't you have money to buy food? No money. I shook my head, not minding showing my scars. My father is dead, and my mother doesn't care about me. I often don't know where my next meal is coming from. Sometimes, I can only eat once every 2 days. Xiao Xian covered her mouth in surprise. There's such a thing. It was no wonder. She came from a happy family, and had been pampered since childhood. Naturally, she couldn't imagine my life. I didn't blame her. Instead, I should thank her. So, I took a deep breath and expressed my thoughts. I know you always buy a lot but eat very little. So can we do this? In the future, whatever you can't finish, I'll help you eat. This way, there won't be any waste. And when the parents' meeting is held, the teacher won't criticize you for this either. Indeed, several times before, the head teacher had specifically pointed this out during the parents' meeting. However, Xiao Xian still didn't change, and went her own way. At that time, I was really extremely envious. Envious that she could do whatever she wanted, eat whatever she liked, and never go hungry. Even more envious that she had parents who loved her, while I had nothing. Facing my proposal, Xiao Xian was a bit hesitant. Won't you feel disgusted eating my leftovers? Why would I feel disgusted? I retorted, looking quite confident. I'm almost starving to death. How can I be so finicky? Not to mention that your food is delicious and clean. Even if it were thrown on the ground, I would pick it up and eat it. There's nothing shameful about it when it comes to survival. Xiao Xian looked at me for a long time, and finally nodded slowly. Do as you like. After saying that, she got up and left. After she left, I let out a long sigh of relief. Looking at the empty plate in front of me, I couldn't help but give a bitter smile. How could I not mind? But as I said, when survival is at stake, such things become insignificant. I just want to live well. What's wrong with that? From that day on, during meals, I would stay by Xiao Xian's side. When she finished eating, it was my turn. At first, she always felt awkward, and would leave as soon as she finished. I was also happy with that. When I was happily eating, suddenly, someone knocked on the table. I looked up and saw several other classmates in the class, both boys and girls. Their faces were full of sarcasm. Zhao Qingqing, before, I thought I was wrong. But it turns out you're really eating Xiao Xian's leftovers. God, isn't that disgusting? Don't you have any shame? If you're so poor, you shouldn't come to school. Wouldn't it be better to go home and farm, and get married early? The taunts and jeers kept pouring into my ears. I clenched my chopsticks, took a deep breath, and looked up at them calmly. I really can't afford to eat. Xiao Xian was kind enough to give me food. I'm very grateful to her. If you're jealous, I can share some with you. There's no need to be envious here. You look quite ugly when you're like this. They were actually rendered speechless and flushed with anger by my retort. Who's jealous? Who do you think is as shameless as you, like a dog? I didn't care. I haven't stolen or robbed. Why am I shameless? Before they could come up with a response, a familiar voice sounded. Yes, she hasn't stolen or robbed. Why are you attacking her? I looked back and saw that it was Xiao Xian. I didn't know why she came back. When the others saw her, they immediately scattered in all directions. Xiao Xian sat across from me again, looking at me as if she wanted to say something but held back. What's wrong? I asked while stuffing a mouthful of spicy pork into my mouth. It was so spicy and delicious. I'm sorry. Her first words were an apology. I was a bit confused. I looked down at the food in front of me, hesitant. Could it be that I couldn't eat it anymore in the future? Of course not. Seeing that I had misunderstood, she quickly waved her hand to explain. They have a problem with me, and took their anger out on you. When I heard this, I understood, but I didn't care. I thought it was something serious. It's okay, as long as it doesn't affect my eating. After saying that, I continued to stuff food into my mouth, not seeing the complex look on her face. Just from that day on, when Xiao Xian bought food, she would ask for an extra bowl. She would put the food she wanted to eat into the bowl, and give the rest to me. Then she would sit and eat with me and leave together. I understood what she meant and silently remembered it in my heart. Soon the summer vacation arrived. I stayed at home and started a life of going hungry one day, and having a full meal the next. For me, who had just had a good life not long ago, this was a torture. After going hungry for 2 meals and drinking 2 large jars of water, I finally heard the sound of the door opening. My mother was back. Mom! I had just opened my mouth when my mother pushed me into the room by the shoulders. Stay in there. I'll let you out when I tell you to. After saying that, my mother closed the door. I heard a man's voice outside. The two of them were chatting very happily. My mother's voice was soft and sweet, as if it could drip water. Suddenly I sniffed. I faintly seemed to smell the fragrance of braised meat. Immediately, I couldn't help but push the door open and go out. My mother was nestled in the arms of that strange man. The two of them were very affectionate. They were both very surprised by my appearance, and even forgot to separate. I walked straight up to them without looking sideways, and then fell to the ground with a thud, covering my stomach, looking extremely weak. Mom, I'm so hungry. Can you give me something to eat? I promise I won't interfere with your business. Please. My mother's face darkened visibly. I was still lying on the ground, moaning weakly from time to time. Seeing this, old Yang looked confused. At this time my mother reacted quickly. She patted her forehead. Oh, usually this child goes out to play. I thought she wasn't at home. I didn't expect her to be sleeping in the room. As she spoke, she quickly pulled me up from the ground. Her actions were not very gentle. Qingqing, why didn't you say a word when you were at home? When my mother asked me, she had a smile on her face, but the hatred in her eyes was also there. Her hand holding my arm was constantly exerting force, as if she wanted to strangle me. I shouted without hesitation. Mom, you're pinching me too hard. As I spoke, I shook off her hand and rolled up my sleeve. There were a few more bruises on my slender arm. Goodness, this time it was really her who did it. When old Yang saw this, his face immediately turned a bit ugly. He beckoned me to come over, touched my head and said, Hungry? Uncle has some braised meat here. Eat some first, okay? I nodded repeatedly, my face full of eagerness. Old Yang was very generous, and gave me the whole pack of braised meat. I said thank you, and then carried the braised meat back to my room. With food, I definitely wouldn't disturb them. I was eating happily when the door of the room was opened again. My mother stood at the door, hands on her hips looking fierce. Zhao Qingqing, you little damned wretch. I don't want to interrupt your date. I interrupted her, licked the oil on my lips, and said seriously, but I'm so hungry. I haven't eaten for 2 meals. I'm almost starving to death. Do you think a mother who starves her own daughter to death will be liked by any man? My mother was left speechless by my retort. She glared at me viciously and finally slammed the door and left without saying a word. I didn't care. These braised meats could last me 2 or 3 meals. At least I wouldn't be hungry for the time being. My mother was away for 2 or 3 days. When she came back, she brought another man, Old Lin. Old Lin looked at me and frowned. Why is this child so thin? My mother sighed. She's a girl. She's worried about getting fat and not looking good. I prepared so much food for her, but she didn't even touch it. There's nothing I can do. Kids grow up and become disobedient. As she spoke, she lowered her head and sobbed a few times. Old Lin felt sorry for her, and was busy comforting her. He also didn't forget to teach me a lesson. You child, why don't you understand your mother's good intentions? I watched her acting. My stomach, which was already uncomfortable from hunger, now couldn't stop feeling nauseous. Suppressing the urge to vomit, I looked innocent. Mom, this uncle is different from the one you brought back a few days ago. But every time you bring back a different uncle, what good things did this uncle give you? Is there any for me? Hearing my words, my mother's body stiffened suddenly. Old Lin's face immediately darkened. His hand that was originally gently patting her back also dropped to his side and clenched into a fist. When May. Old Lin took a deep breath and his tone was a bit strange. Do you often bring different men back? My mother was in a panic and shook her head repeatedly. No, don't listen to this child. She's lying. As she spoke, she glared at me fiercely. I pretended to be scared and quickly nodded. Yes, I'm lying. Mom hasn't brought any other men. All those clothes, jewelry, food, and daily necessities weren't given by those men. Shut up. My mother was so angry that her whole body was shaking. She raised her hand towards me. But before the slap could land on my face, Old Lin had already turned around and left in a rage. My mother hurried after him, naturally having no time to care about me. I was glad for the freedom. Looking at the forgotten food on the table, I showed a knowing smile. Great, there's more to eat. I had ruined 2 relationships for her in a row. My mother was furious. She closed the door and prepared to have a calm talk with me. Zhao Qingqing, tell me, what on earth do you want? I'm your biological mother. I gave birth to you and raised you. If you don't know how to be grateful, that's fine. But do you want to ruin my entire life? If I had known you were a disaster, I should have listened to your grandmother and drowned you as soon as you were born. Maybe your father wouldn't have died, and I wouldn't have ended up in this situation. As she spoke, my mother was overcome with grief. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. She looked extremely pitiful. Sitting across from her, I felt no emotion in my heart, and I even wanted to laugh a little. I had long known that she didn't like me, because I was a girl and couldn't carry on the family line for the Zhao family, because she thought I had killed my father, and because of my existence, she was not welcome in her husband's family. Once her husband died, the Zhao family cut off all ties with her. I really felt like crying. How could I have such power? I refused to take the blame. What I wanted was very simple. Let me have enough to eat and drink, and be able to go to school, and I wouldn't cause trouble. I stared at her intently and said word by word. Other than that, I have no other requests. Do you know how hard it is for me, a widow, to live? If you don't show me any understanding, why do you have so many demands? Is my mother really that hard? I interrupted her sobbing. Looking at her glamorous appearance, I smiled sarcastically. When you were buying clothes and going out to eat and drink, why didn't you think about how hard your life was? I just want to eat. I'm not asking for the stars in the sky. If I don't have enough to eat, I promise I won't let you live in peace. If you want to find a man, I'll spoil every relationship. Just try it and see. My mother was so angry that her facial features were distorted. She stared at me, wishing she could eat me alive. I was fearless. I was no longer that naive and ignorant child. I was a ghost who had crawled out of hell. If anyone dared to bully me again, I would definitely drag them down to hell with me. As a result of the confrontation, my mother compromised. She promised not to starve me randomly anymore. But she also made a request. After the school started, she wanted me to live in the school dormitory to prevent me from suddenly going crazy and ruining her affairs again. I had no objection to this. Compared to this home, I preferred to stay at school. Only there did I feel that I was truly alive. When the vacation ended, my mother sent me to school and handled the dormitory registration for me. She also left me some money. I used part of this money for food and saved most of it to buy workbooks. Having experienced the hardships of my previous life, I deeply understood the importance of reading. However, my learning conditions were extremely poor. I could only rely on hard work. Now, although I was still working hard, it was still twice the effort for half the result. Among the entire senior high school entrance examination candidates, I was not that outstanding. When the senior high school entrance examination was approaching, I got sick. Finally, when the senior high school entrance examination ended and I got my grades, I couldn't help but sigh. The good news was that I had been admitted to high school. The bad news was that my grades were average, and I could only barely get into an ordinary high school. My mother was very gloating about this result. During the family dinner, she specifically brought it up. You insisted on going to school. I thought you were so capable, but you only got such a low score. Aren't you ashamed to tell others? My aunt, who loved to watch the excitement, joined in. In my opinion, it's a waste of money for a girl to go to school. Sooner or later, she'll get married and go to her husband's family. It's better to go out and work to earn money to support the family, while she's still young, and show respect to us elders. Don't be like those ungrateful people who only care about filling their own pockets, and never think about their family members. While belittling me, she didn't forget to stab my mother in the back. Good. This was the aunt I was familiar with. She hadn't changed at all. My mother's face didn't look good. But in this regard, they surprisingly had the same opinion. So they rarely quarreled. Instead, they stared at me, looking as if they were ready to scold me. Are you kidding? I wouldn't give them the chance. I stood up suddenly, spun around like a whirlwind, and ate every dish on the table. After eating each dish, I licked my chopsticks to ensure that my saliva was evenly distributed before eating the next one. After I was done, everyone present was stunned. It was a long time before my grandmother spoke tremblingly. Ching you. I waved my hand to stop her words. With oil all over my face and ketchup on the corner of my mouth, looking like I had just eaten a child raw, I pouted and smiled, scaring the old lady half to death. Grandma, you didn't say anything just now. Now just shut up. Otherwise, when I go crazy, I won't recognize anyone, not even my own family. Sure enough, my grandmother was so scared that she didn't dare to breathe. She cowered behind my uncle. I curled my lips. Everyone thought I was easy to bully. Everyone's faces turned green, while I left after having my fill. After walking out of the hotel, the smile on my face immediately disappeared. I wandered around the street alone, not knowing what to do. Unconsciously, I walked from dawn to dusk. My legs were so sore and weak that I had no strength left. I randomly sat down on a step, propped my chin with my hands, and stared blankly at the road. It was as if I had been sealed in a snow-capped mountain. The cold around me was attacking me, gradually numbing my heart. Zhao Qingqing, what are you doing here at night? A familiar voice suddenly sounded in my ear. I was startled and subconsciously looked up. When I saw Qiao Xian's curious and worried eyes, I suddenly had a feeling. A hole had been broken in that iceberg, and then light shone in, warm and bright. I didn't want to talk about the mess at home, so I made up an excuse casually. Oh, my senior high school entrance examination results were not good. I'm in a bad mood and came out for a walk. I thought Qiao Xian would understand, but I overlooked one thing. Not good grades. I remember they were pretty good. Qiao Xian took out her phone and looked at it, looking puzzled. Look, our grades are about the same. My mother was so excited when she saw my grades that she almost cried. How are they not good? That's right. Qiao Xian was a poor student, and an extremely poor one at that. In this senior high school entrance examination, our grades were on a par. For her, this was already an extraordinary performance, so she was extremely excited. I sighed helplessly. Qiao Xian put away her phone and sat down next to me without minding. She put her arm around my shoulder and pretended to be profound. I know you've been under a lot of pressure from studying recently. I can understand that you're not satisfied with this result. But think about it, our grades are similar, and we might be in the same school and the same class. Maybe we can even be desk mates. In this way, you don't have to worry about food. Doesn't that make you feel much better? I thought about it. It seemed that was really the case. Seeing me nod, Qiao Xian smiled brightly and patted my shoulder. So, you should always look on the bright side of things. Although you didn't do well in this exam, there will be opportunities in the future. I believe in you. You will definitely make your dreams come true. Meeting Qiao Xian's trusting eyes, my broken soul seemed to have a band-aid stuck on it. It seemed that I could hold on a little longer. I decided to have a good talk with my mother. Of course, if she didn't want to talk, I could also roll around on the ground. After all, who doesn't go crazy in life? Fortunately, my mother still had some sense. When I was willing to talk properly, she also did. But when she heard that I wanted to continue high school, she couldn't hold it in anymore. Where do you get the nerve to go to high school? Look at what you're like. Are you cut out for studying? It's better to go to work early, and let me have an easier time. In a couple of years, find a man with a car and a house and get married. Then I won't have to worry about you every day. Looking at her Philistine face, I took a breath and secretly told myself to be calm. I couldn't be impulsive. Going crazy was the best way to vent, but it couldn't solve all problems. Unless it was absolutely necessary, I should use a more civilized way. Do you really want me to go out and work? I asked seriously. Before my mother could nod, I took the lead. But if that's the case, I'll often have to live at home. You might see me every day. At my age, I can't find a good job. At most, I can wash dishes and plates in a restaurant. I'll probably get off work very late. If you bring a man back during this time, do you think it's appropriate? Will I disturb you? Or can you still act shamelessly in front of me? Zhao Qingqing. Before I could finish, my mother was already furious. She pointed at my nose, trembling. You little wretch. Are you here to collect a debt? I shrugged, non-committal. If you want to think that way, I can't help it. My mother was so angry that she almost fell backwards. I'm really thinking for you. If you let me continue to go to school, I promise I won't show up in front of you unless necessary. How about it? My mother was hesitant. I gave her another strong dose. The tuition for school is like a loan from you. Whether I can get into college or not in the future, I will pay you back double. As soon as she heard this, my mother immediately perked up and agreed without hesitation. Looking at her gloomy face, I thought it was ridiculous. So, the mother-daughter relationship between us was not even worth the tuition. How absurd. If it were someone else, they might have already had a mental breakdown and couldn't bear it. But I was different. I was not an ordinary person. I was crazy. In my world, there was no one else but me. Well, maybe there should also be Qiao Xian. But she was a good person. I didn't want her to become a crazy person. There was only one poor person like me in the world. Although I had successfully negotiated with my mother, she must have been unhappy in her heart. This was reflected in the living expenses. Before the school started, she paid the tuition for 3 years in one go. I believed her. But then, after only 2 months, she started to cause trouble again. She was deducting my living expenses. Each time it was a little less. Little by little, over time, the money left in my hands was very little. I knew what was going on. During this period, she had a new boyfriend. The man had some money, and she had a strong sense of self-esteem. She didn't want the man to see her as a burden. So every date was basically AA. When she received a gift, she would also return one of a similar price. She didn't have much savings originally, and she spent money extravagantly on weekdays. Soon she was in financial difficulties. My grandmother wanted to help, but her ability was limited, and she was closely watched by my aunt. It was just a drop in the bucket, and had little effect. My mother took it for granted to deduct my living expenses to make up for the shortfall in her life. This was understandable. The key was that the living expenses she gave me were very little. When I went to register, she specifically asked around in the school cafeteria. She wrote down carefully in a small notebook which dishes were the cheapest, and then calculated the minimum living expenses. On this basis, she still wanted to deduct. If it weren't for Chow Exan, I would have starved to death long ago. She wasn't stingy. She was vicious. She didn't have me in her heart at all. Even with Chow Exan, I didn't have to worry about food and drink. But those living expenses were for me to buy exercise books. Diligence can make up for clumsiness, and practice makes perfect. I had to study hard and get into a good university. To stand out in the college entrance examination, I couldn't relax for a moment. I listened carefully in class. After class, I rushed to the office with my books and pestered the teacher at their desks. When I returned to the dormitory at night, my roommates had already gone to bed. I took out my exercise books and sat in the corridor. The corridor lights were motion sensor lights and would go out every 30 seconds. At first, I would cough to turn them on, but after doing it too many times, I disturbed others and was scolded severely. I didn't refute a word. I just lowered my head and apologized sincerely. Later, I went to the platform between the stairs. It was far away from the dormitory. Even if I made a sound, it wouldn't disturb others. But it was too cold there. The window was old and couldn't be opened. In winter, the wind seeped in through the cracks of the window and penetrated into the marrow of my bones, making me feel extremely cold. In summer, it was extremely stuffy. Many times, I would lean against the window crack and take a deep breath of air. The instant coolness it brought was the motivation for me to persevere. Mosquito bites were trivial matters. Since I had to hold a pen, I couldn't wear gloves. It was not uncommon for chilblains to appear on the back of my hands. I didn't care, but Chow Exan didn't like it. If you freeze your hands, you won't be able to write in the college entrance examination in the future. Then you'll really cry. I smiled. There was nothing I could do. I didn't have good learning conditions, and couldn't afford tutoring fees. I could only rely on hard work. At least there were results. Yes, hard work really paid off. When I first entered school, among more than 1,000 students in the whole school, I ranked 937th. Now with one semester almost over, I had risen to 300th. The teacher was astonished by my progress, and my classmates were full of envy. Only when Chow Exan looked at me, her eyes were filled with heartache. I comforted her. If you really feel sorry for me, then work hard quickly. Let's strive to be in the same university. I'll still eat your leftovers. I don't know if my words moved her, but she really started to work hard. I was very pleased and thus worked even harder to do exercises, doing them frantically. I wished I could buy all the exercise books on the market and do them 10 or 20 times. But now, my living expenses were shrinking day by day, and I simply didn't have the money to buy them. I had finally grown a pair of wings and had the opportunity to fly into the blue sky. Yet someone insisted on breaking my wings and then scolded me for being incompetent. Was I really incompetent? I didn't believe it. So on Friday night, I feigned being unwell, asked for leave, and carried my school bag to find my mother. Oh my dear mother, your nemesis has arrived. Every Friday night, my mother had a fixed gathering with her colleagues in a restaurant. I arrived just in time. The dishes had just been served. They were holding their wine glasses, chatting and laughing, about to clink glasses. Mom! I let out a plaintive and desolate call. My mother's hand trembled in fright. She turned her head and saw me, and was completely stunned. You, why are you here? Apparently, she never expected me to appear at this time. I didn't say a word but stared eagerly at the dishes on the table, not blinking, looking as if my mouth was watering from hunger. Seeing this, an aunt among her colleagues greeted me warmly. This is Chuanmei's daughter, right? Long time no see. You've grown so big. Come on, come and eat together. As she spoke, she stuffed a pair of chopsticks into my hand. I held the chopsticks tightly and said obediently, "Thank you, Aunt. I haven't eaten for 2 days. I'm really hungry." Hearing this, everyone's expressions changed, and their eyes on my mother also changed. Pretending not to notice, I continued. Of course, it's not my mother's fault. Although my mother said that girls are a financial burden, and don't need to eat too well, as long as they don't die. Just marry a rich man in the future. But I think my mother still cares about me. She knew I hadn't eaten, and specifically told me she was here so that I could come and find her. At this moment, everyone's expressions were colorful and wonderful. My mother, in the midst of it, was trembling all over, grinding her teeth. What are you talking nonsense about? Didn't I give you money for food? Of course you did. I nodded vigorously, looking sincere. My mother gives me 200 yuan a month. I've never seen so much money. What can 200 yuan a month be used for? An aunt beside me muttered. My son also lives in the school dormitory. He needs at least 200 yuan a week. Sometimes it's not even enough. Another uncle chimed in. This little girl is so thin. She's probably starving. Listening to everyone whispering, my mother couldn't take it anymore. She forced a smile, stood up and explained. It's all my fault. I was too busy last month and forgot to give her money. Ching ching, don't be angry with mom. Mom will definitely pay more attention in the future, okay? Looking at her, who was clearly furious but forced to smile, I felt extremely satisfied in my heart, but showed nothing on my face. I nodded submissively and muttered in a low voice. Mom, as long as you don't hit me, I will do whatever you say. Crack. I clearly heard the sound of the mask on her face cracking. She took a deep breath, forced a smile, grabbed my hand and dragged me out. In a deserted corner, she gave my hand a hard shake. Zhao Qingqing, what on earth do you want? Are you trying to ruin my reputation? Didn't we make an agreement before? Are you going back on your word? Don't forget I'm your mother. I can let you go to school, and I can also stop you from going to school. Looking at my mother in a rage, I expressionlessly rubbed my wrist. I felt no emotion in my heart, and even wanted to laugh a little. I don't want to go back on my word. It's you who broke your promise. Since you can't do what you promised, I don't mind reminding you. My mother knew she was in the wrong, and was left speechless. She rummaged through her pocket for a long time, and finally took out 500 yuan, and stuffed it all into my hand. She pointed at my nose and warned me. I've given you the money. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Otherwise I'll break your legs. I pinched the money and smiled. If you give me the money on time and in full every month, I promise I'll never show up in front of you again. Got it. Get out of here quickly. I obediently took the money and left. After walking a certain distance, I looked back at my mother. She had already gone back, and was saying something to her colleagues, smiling brightly. In fact, she really looked good when she smiled. Unfortunately, I rarely got to see it. From then on, my mother really gave me money on time, and in full, never short-changing me again. And I, as promised, never went to cause trouble for her again. I didn't go home during festivals, New Year holidays, or summer and winter vacations. It could be considered a little filial piety from me, her daughter. Actually, I was doing quite well at school. My head teacher had just started working, and lived in the school staff dormitory. I would go to him on time to report, ask questions, do exercises, ask more questions, and continue doing exercises. It was a cycle without end. I had always known that I wasn't an extremely intelligent child. All I could rely on was my unwillingness to give up, and my heart, that wanted to strive upward. So no matter how painful the process was, even if I had to grit my teeth, I had to persevere. As for eating, which had once been the most difficult thing for me, it was now the most worry-free. I was still Xiao Xian's dedicated food finisher. With her around, not only did I not go hungry, but I even ate better. In 1 year, I was no longer as skinny as before, and had a little flesh on my face. As for clothes, 2 sets of school uniforms were enough for me to change and wash. I wanted to use every minute and second to do exercises. I simply had no time to care about dressing up. I had no time. One day, Xiao Xian suddenly became obsessed with buying best friend clothes. She always stuffed one for me. At first, I found it a bit strange. When did we become best friends? Xiao Xian grinned. We even eat the same meals. Aren't we best friends? Looking at her pretending to be fierce and the clothes in my hand, I lowered my head and smiled knowingly. When she learned that I had no money to listen to English recordings, she also generously stuffed an MP3 into my hand. When she learned that I would stay at school during summer and winter vacations, Xiao Xian didn't say a word and took me to her home. At first, I wanted to refuse. She had helped me a lot, and I didn't want to trouble her anymore. But the reason she gave was sufficient. I've made great progress in my studies recently. My mother is so happy. She really wants to meet you. If you don't go, my mother will think you look down on her, and will be sad. Oh my God. Holy Mary. How could I dare? So I followed her home. For the first time, I entered that luxurious villa, saw servants for the first time, and met such a kind-hearted, gentle, and beautiful mother for the first time. It was Xiao Xian's mother. She was noble and elegant with a kind smile. She took my hand, and kept praising me. Not only did she not dislike the chilblains on my hands, but she also looked so shintung, that she was almost in tears. At that time, looking at her, I was thinking, what would my mother's reaction be if she saw this? Probably she would look disgusted, and tell me to stay away from her, and not dirty her new dress. How ridiculous. I stayed at Xiao Xian's home. We studied together, ate and lived together. Her room was dreamy and beautiful, just like a princess room in a fairy tale. Because of my arrival, an extra bed was added to that princess room, exactly the same as hers. She told me, you are also a princess. Yes, I was also a princess. Because of Xiao Xian's help, I saved a lot of living expenses, and could buy more exercise books, and do more exercises. The knowledge in my mind was accumulating more and more, almost overflowing. But I enjoyed it and never felt tired. Studying was currently the most effective way to get out of my difficult situation. Day after day, year after year without end. My grades were getting better day by day, and my ranking was steadily moving forward. From 200th, to 100th, to the top 50, the top 30, the top 10. When I rushed to the top 5, I held the report card and sat in the empty classroom, crying uncontrollably. The feeling of finally seeing the results of my efforts was indescribable. After crying, I looked up and saw a cup of milk tea on the table. I knew it was Xiao Xian who had put it there. She was always like this, seemingly carefree, but actually being careful to protect my sensitive and fragile self-esteem. My mother actually took the initiative to contact me. I was very surprised. After learning the reason, I laughed. It turned out that because my grades were getting better and better, the neighbors praised me when they talked about it. My mother, who was extremely vain, how could she let this opportunity pass? So apart from giving living expenses, the mother-daughter pair who had never met each other sat down to have a meal together for the first time. It was really rare. I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted to eat. My mother originally wanted to talk while eating, but seeing that I had been eating for a long time without stopping, she couldn't sit still. Daughter, you did really well in this mock exam. You've brought honor to Mom. I knew you were definitely capable. Uncle Joe knows about this, and also speaks highly of you. He also said that he would invite you to his home as a guest someday. What do you think? I put down my chopsticks and stared at her intently. I stared at her until she felt uneasy and her eyes dodged. Then I sneered. Now you think I'm cut out for studying? You didn't say that before. Well, Mom wasn't. And that Uncle Joe, he's the man I've been dating recently. His family also has a child 2 years younger than you. His grades are not as good as yours. He's really worried. Daughter, since your grades are so good, why don't you help Uncle Joe's son with his homework? It's also helping Mom. It's good for you too. You know, if we get married, he definitely won't treat you badly. Oh, so that was her plan. I rolled my eyes and firmly refused. Don't even think about it. My mother's smile froze, and she still didn't give up. Don't be angry. This matter. There's no room for negotiation. I didn't give her a chance to speak. I was expressionless. If you say one more word, I'll flip this table and knock you to the ground. Just try me. Remembering my crazy behavior before, my mother immediately backed down. Without saying a word, she got up and left, glaring at me fiercely before she left. I didn't care. A glare wouldn't kill me. Finally, the day of the college entrance examination arrived. I was fully prepared. Unexpectedly, when waiting outside the examination hall, I actually saw my mother. After seeing her dress and demeanor, I knew she wasn't there for me. She was there to show off. Somehow, the saying that mothers wearing cheongsams during the college entrance examination could ensure victory had spread. So, there were mothers in cheongsams everywhere outside the examination hall. They all carried blessings for their children. Even Xiao Xian's mother was no exception. She held our 2 hands, giving countless exhortations, every word filled with concern. I nodded obediently, filled with emotion in my heart. And my mother, she was also wearing a cheongsam. She was standing right in front of the camera lens, striking various poses showing off. Even when the reporter was interviewing others, she would push her way in to get attention, for fear of not being filmed. People around pointed at her, and spoke with disdain. I heard the general idea. My mother and that boyfriend had broken up again. Now she was alone. As she got older, her situation was much worse than before. She had been too picky before, looking down on everyone, and offending them all. Now she regretted it and wanted to go back. But unfortunately those grasses were long gone. My mother had no choice but to find another way. She wanted to become a celebrity, and add some value to herself. It was really absurd, something only she could do. I had no comment on this. I was there to take the exam, to change my destiny. Other people's affairs had nothing to do with me. When I received the admission notice, I was a bit dazed. I repeatedly opened and examined that mail, then put it back, opened it again, and examined it once more. Although I had been prepared, when the result really came, I still couldn't believe it. I had actually been admitted to my ideal university, and with extremely excellent grades. Not only were my tuition fees waived, but there were also various subsidies. You know, for someone who didn't even go to high school in the previous life, this was a fun tanfudi to change. I endured and endured, but finally couldn't hold back. I sat on the ground, holding the notice and crying out loud. But I knew that this time, the crying was not for sadness, but for the brand new beginning of my life. My mother was also excited and shouted that she wanted to hold an entrance banquet for me. This was a big deal, and couldn't be taken lightly. It had to be a grand affair. For this reason, she specifically invited my grandmother, uncle and aunt's family. They gathered around and discussed enthusiastically. When they were chatting the most excitedly, I poured a bucket of cold water on them. No need. Xiao Xian's mother is already helping me prepare. What? Hearing this, they were immediately dumbfounded. My mother was even more furious, glaring. The entrance banquet is such an important thing. How can an outsider handle it? Who on earth is your mother? I smiled slightly. What do you think? I stopped paying attention to her, and looked at the others. My grandmother and uncle seemed a bit restrained. My aunt, as always, was clueless. She smiled and said, "Our Ching is really promising. I've always thought you were extraordinary since you were a child." Really? You didn't say that before. My aunt's smiling face froze. I looked at the time and left. There seemed to be shouts of anger behind me, but the candidates were gradually moving away from me. I packed my luggage, and prepared to go to school. Before I left, my mother came to me again, dawdling and hesitant to speak. I ignored her and was busy packing my luggage, making the final arrangements. After all, if nothing unexpected happened, I would never come back to this place again. Ching. Probably realizing that she couldn't wait for me to speak first, my mother called me tremblingly. "You're about to go to college. Does Mom need to see you off?" "No need." I didn't even turn my head, continuing my actions with a calm tone. "I've already bought the ticket. There will be a senior sister picking me up at the station. But you're a little girl, and have never been far away from home. What if? What if what?" I couldn't stand her babbling and finally turned to look at her. with a mocking smile on my face. I had never lived in a school dormitory before, and I had never been alone at home. But I got through all that, didn't I? You ignored me completely back then, leaving me to fend for myself. Now you're trying to act like a caring mother? What, you can't find a man now, have no mood to dress up, think life is boring, and suddenly remember you have a daughter, and want to rediscover motherly love and feel family affection. There's no need. Really, there's no need. My mother had aged. There were more and more wrinkles on her face, and her momentum was long gone. After I lashed out at her, she didn't seem angry, but rather looked extremely sad, as if feeling guilty. But I didn't believe it. Even if she regretted treating me that way back then, the harm had already been done. Now should I forgive her just because she regrets it? I won't forgive. I will never forgive her in my life. Mom, you're always my mother. I won't abandon you, but I won't love you either. From now on, there will be no more ties between us. When I can earn money, I will send you money according to the minimum alimony stipulated by the state. Then we will never see each other again. Every time I see you, I will remember how many times I almost starved to death, how you cursed me, and how you ignored me in the past. Your life is a mess, while my life has just begun. I don't want to lose my expectations for the future, for my partner, and for my children because of you. I will live a good life, and whether you live well or not is your own business. I took out an envelope and placed it on the table. This is the tuition I borrowed from you back then. Now I'm returning it with double the principal and interest. Part of the money in here is what I earned from working during the summer vacation, and part is the reward from the school. After returning it to you, I don't owe you anything. No. I was just... My mother waved her hands in panic, refusing. It was a joke. You're my child. How could I take your money? Whether it was a joke or not, you and I both know the truth. I didn't accept her excuse. It was too fake. No matter what you think, I've given what I should give. Farewell. After saying that, I picked up my packed luggage and left without looking back, leaving this home that had trapped me for years. There seemed to be someone calling me from behind, but I couldn't hear clearly, and I never looked back. The days in college were fulfilling and busy. Although there were subsidies from the school, I still took part-time jobs in my spare time. Of course, I didn't slack off in my studies at all. I knew how hard the learning opportunity was. It was an opportunity one got after going through life and death. During the orientation of the new year, I unexpectedly met an acquaintance, Xiao Xian. Why are you here? Compared to me, Xiao Xian seemed very calm and composed. She waved her hand. I didn't do well in the exam last year, so I repeated a year. Finally, I got into the same school as you. I was a bit surprised. Why did you have to get into this school? I remembered that her grades last year were not bad. She had passed the first-tier university admission line. At that time, we held the entrance banquet together. During that time she seemed a bit depressed. I even comforted her that it didn't matter if we weren't in the same school. With the developed communication now, we could still keep in touch often. But after entering college, I entered a new stage, being busy all the time, and only had time to call her occasionally. She didn't say much. Unexpectedly, Xiao Xian tilted her head and pointed her finger at her chin. Probably because I'm used to eating with you. Without you, I feel uncomfortable all over. I was stunned. What kind of reason is that? Xiao Xian nodded affirmatively. Yes, that's it. As she spoke, she hooked her arm around my neck and hung on me like a lazy koala. You don't know how I got through this year. You have to compensate me. I couldn't help but laugh and cry, begging for mercy. Okay. I'll listen to you. Can you let go of me first? No. Well, maybe. It depends on your performance. The gentle breeze blew, and the girl's laughter dissipated in the wind. I finally walked out of the place that had trapped me for a lifetime, walked out of that mountain. There might be more difficulties and obstacles in the future, but I believe that no difficulty will become an obstacle to my progress. Because I learned to love myself. I live for myself. More fortunately, I met a lifelong friend during the most difficult time of my life. She made me feel warmer than my mother. I had gone through hardships, but God was still kind to me. So I was grateful. The road ahead was bright. The end.